Bryan Fonseca back with the Terriers Sports Network here at NEC Media Day, joined now by head coach of the St. Francis women's basketball team, John Thurston. So, Coach T, Canada, you guys, first of all, what factored into the decision to take the team out to Canada?
Well, Irma told us we were going, so that was number one. The men had gone 4 years ago, and they only had enough money to send one team. So when the men, when it came around, you can only go once every 4 years. When it came around for the men to be able to take another trip, Irma said she would only approve it if the women went also. So if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have gone. But so she was basically the driving force behind it. We didn't ask; she told us we were going. So, and it turned out to be a great trip.
So let's stay there for a second. What do you feel like came about the trip? Because you played some pretty good teams out there. You got to get a feel for, who's where earlier than maybe you would have expected or anticipated. So what do you come away from that trip seeing from your team?
Well, it first of all, it gives you an opportunity to see your new players play, to be able to judge, where they're at. Also, your returning players. So you get to. We only practiced 4 days. Now the men practiced 10. We practiced 4. So when we went up there, we had no idea what the level of competition was going to be. But basically, we were just trying to get a feel for ourselves. So it kind of gets your team together, where the veteran players get to know the new players, because we had with Amy O'Neill, we had 4 new players together with the freshmen. So the bus ride up there, the sightseeing, all of that stuff is really serves to get your team closer together, so that they know one another. The meals that you eat, all the different things that you do, your team is together much faster than if you're just waiting till the start of school.
Right.
So it allowed us, when we did start workouts after Labor Day, when school started, the players knew what they had to work on. They knew where they stood, whether it was conditioning or defense or what have you. They had a pretty good idea of what they needed to do moving forward. And unless you make a trip like that, you don't know that. So, and it turned out pretty good. I mean, we played much better than I thought we would. We weren't going up there with any idea of wins or losses or anything like that. But, we were 3-1. Our last game was our best game. And it turns out those teams are pretty good. I checked their records yesterday, and they're a combined 19-4, and 3 of their losses are against Division I teams. So, and they've beaten other Division I teams. McGill, we're their only loss in their last 15 games. So it worked out well, and we saw kids in tough situations. It is a difficult situation with international rules, a 24-second clock, different officiating rules, being on the road, and we came through it pretty good. So I was immensely pleased with the overall effect that it had on our team.
So for the first time in a few years, you have kind of an upperclassman heavy roster. You have a lot of juniors who have been together, and you have 1 senior. So last time you had that, we know what happened. You guys ended up winning the title. So how does that help you, I guess I would ask?
Well, it's different than the last time in that when and I say this to people all the time, our best team was not the team that won the NCAAs, that won the NEC, and went to the NCAAs. It was the year before. The 19-win season is more similar to this team. Rather, the NCAA team had seniors and freshmen. Okay, there was a big gap. Practices were distorted. It was never close. Where with this team now, no matter how I shuffle the lineups, it's even. With 12 players, it's even. Everything is even, dead even. You couldn't go in, you couldn't walk into our gym and say, there's your starting lineup. You'd have a difficult time doing that now, which again is part of the effect of the Canada trip, and the fact that our new players now are a little bit better, I think, than the group that we brought in 4 years ago. All right, they're a little bit further along. So um, I would say that this team, and I tell them this every day, that they are very similar to the 19-win team in terms of experience and youth. So.
And lastly, what do you feel like that does for them? You telling them that, I mean, kind of almost putting pressure on them, raising their expectations a bit, but what do you feel like that does for them, I guess, from a mental standpoint?
This is a very difficult team to read, okay, because I try to tell them every day that, I think they're pretty good. We can be good. We got to keep raising our own bar every day. And they kind of look at you like, who are you talking about, and which is funny, because it's like you're talking to yourself. So it's almost like you want to say, well, we're really bad, and then they'd feel comfortable, But I think, until you start playing games against other teams, and we play a very difficult schedule, we could win 1 or 2 games in non-conference and still be pretty good. Until you start playing games, you don't know where you're going to be. The pressure starts to come when you get into conference play, and you're fighting to get into playoffs, okay, or you're in and you're trying to move up into the top 4. I think that's where the pressure comes. I don't think you see that now. I think the kids know that we've got good depth. Everybody's going to play. There's very little difference between what you would say the number 1 player and the number 12 player is. I don't know which either one of those are. So that's the thing that pleases me, is that we've had an improvement across the board, and that our new players challenge our veteran players every single day in practice. And that's the most important thing at this time. The rest of it's going to kind of fall into place as the season goes on.
All right, and that's a wrap from Barclays Center from NEC in NYC. Bryan Fonseca from the Terriers Sports Network signing off. Let me do that again. Yeah, do it one more time. And that is a wrap from NEC in NYC here from Barclays Center for John Thurston. I'm Bryan Fonseca from the Terriers Sports Network, signing off from Brooklyn, New York.